I think clients need to allow agencies to get paid for what they're supposed to do or do what they get paid for, which is to give the perspective, a different perspective, is to give it the freshness. If you want an agency that's going to give you exactly what you know, right, you should have an in-house agency, and we know how well those worked. Okay, I'm Ahmed, better pronounced Ahmed Tilly. I dream, I create, and then I tell those stories. That's basically what I do. If the 5-year-old doesn't get that, I'll tell the 5-year-old. I make ads. Might be easier for the 5-year-old to understand. But yeah, I think I'm more a dreamer, a creator, and then a storyteller. I think once you get into advertising, what you get exposed to are these amazing minds, this freedom of expression and thought, and it's an amazing environment to be in. And I think that if you do leave advertising, it doesn't leave you. So you never leave it, because the things that you learn in advertising, the way in which you approach problems, understanding culture, learning about all the things that are arts and entertainment and business and information, all those things stay with you. And the way that you kind of approach problem solving, I don't think you ever leave. So I think it's true in saying that people don't leave advertising, and when they do, advertising doesn't leave them. And I know a lot of guys who've gone into comedy and who've done film, done all sorts of things, business, but they take the principles and the thinking that they've learned in their years in advertising, and I'm sure they apply it. It becomes second nature. I can't see you ignoring that information wherever you go. The Apple Think Different ad. Early in Apple's days, the way that piece was written, probably in the late 80s maybe, still so relevant today. And I guess it's my favorite piece of work because it speaks to me as a creative person. But I love it even more because it speaks beyond the creative person, it speaks to the creative spirit. So when you look at entrepreneurs and you look at dreamers, that piece of work actually tells you how thinking differently actually moves the world forward. I mean, that's amazing for me. That writing is the piece of writing I'm most jealous of. It is amazing. And they used great words. And okay, they've used famous people in there, but very simple execution. And it just shows the power of a very strong idea and strong writing and how you can move the entire world. And Apple is really one of the most valuable companies, not because of that ad, but because of what it stood for. So the Think Different campaign for me is up there with probably the most favorite piece of work for me. So here's the interesting thing. I mean, to talk about the power of the brand, you're talking about some really smart people who know that technically it's not better than another product. And they know that it's more expensive than a competitor product. And still happy to spend that money, happy to stand in that queue for the latest one, knowing there'll be some issues in it. That's the power of a brand. That's the power of true love. And that's what Apple has. And that's why it's the most valuable company in the world. So by definition, a creative brief, there's a requirement. And that first requirement is to be unexpected, to be original, to be different. Because otherwise it's not creative, is it? It's more of the same. It's wallpaper, and anyone can do that. So that's a copy and paste job. So I think one of the most difficult things is always to be honest enough to know that something is not original, or it's not an original take on something, or it's not fresh. The word that I use a lot is unexpected. So that's a very difficult part of the equation. Also, what you want to do is also not have a piece of work that is highly creative, which it can be, but not solving a problem. So that's the second thing I find is quite difficult, is you have to solve the problem, and the manner in which you solve that problem has to be unexpected. I think advertising people often make a mistake. A lot of our creative people make that mistake, go like, but this is amazing, this is fucking awesome, look at it, it's different. But actually, yes, it's different, but it's got no relevance to the problem. You're not solving the problem, and then it should be just a piece of art. It doesn't need a logo for it. You know what I mean? That's when you don't have to do something for someone else to like. You're an artist. But in the business that we are, we're solving problems. You need a lot of people to like your solution, and they need it to be unexpected so they actually stop and notice it. So I think originality and problem solving, or let's put it this way, solving a business problem in the most original, most unexpected, most contagious, most evocative way is the ultimate ask. And none of those things are less difficult than the other. It's the whole thing that's difficult, not easy at all. I mean, you can argue both ways, but I think that sometimes understanding a brand for a team or for the team working on a specific problem, understanding the brand is important. But I think sometimes it's also a limitation. It's a huge limitation if you understand the brand too well. And where's the freshness? Where's the excitement? Where's the interest? Where's the perspective? The wood from the trees. And I find that, you can get stale on something. I must be honest, I'll be frank. I think our clients make some of the biggest mistakes because they know too much about their own brand. So if you have a client that's living and breathing its brand, that's considered a good thing, but it's also a bad thing. Now, if you put a team that knows equally as much as the client does, the combination of those two is not going to give you anything surprising, right? Which is why I believe freshness is important. I think you're dealing with really smart people. You have certain people who are common, as in the process. So if you've got a strategist who lives and breathes it, you've got an account leader or account management person who understands the brand, is there to understand the parameters of the brand and which it can operate in. Then you need people who break those parameters. Otherwise, there's no movement forward. So the freshness for me is crucial. Anyone who says, oh, you need a team that knows this brand so well, I think is actually digging their own grave. Consistency. I mean, like the thing about Nike, like the other brands that I mentioned, they never deviate so far from the tone. They believe in it. They believe in whatever they're telling you. They're fearless. They're brave. And those are the elements that if you're brave, you're true to yourself, your authentic self, and you remain consistent over a long period of time. People know who you are. They believe what you're about. Then obviously executionally, you can't take away from any of those brands and a whole lot of other brands that are consistently delivering really smart, really fresh, and well executed work. It's not about expensive, but it's well executed. You put the right people behind it. It's the same thing like if you're looking at music or movies. You put the right production value behind a really good script, and it's going to be amazing. And if you cheat on the production values on a really good script, it's not going to be as good. So I think there's a number of reasons, but I think those are the most important ones. It's interesting because when you're up for a pitch, all the clients want to know how you've done at the awards. It's a very interesting thing, right? And then you get into the room and then you show them the awards, whatever, and they go, okay, cool, let's tick that box off. But the real test comes in when you present the first piece of work and it's creatively brilliant. Award-winning work, but creatively brilliant. And they start watering it down. I just wonder why you would hire someone who has those credentials and then suppress them. So it's an interesting thing for me. I think so. Let's rephrase it. It's not so much about whether the clients appreciate awards. I think the best clients will appreciate great breakthrough, creative work that makes people love their brand. It so happens that a lot of award-winning work is supposed to be that, yet majority of the work, as a country, we have to look how much advertising we've done, how much of that is that kind of work. It's a very small percentage. Very, very few clients actually understand what a good piece of creative is, I've found. I'm only in the game for like 20 odd years, and I found that early in my career, there were more clients appreciative and of the understanding of a good piece of creative work. And over the last 5 or 10 years, less and less, to such a point that I mean, it's a bold statement to make, but I'd say very few clients that make the decisions on the creative work have an appreciation for what a good creative idea is. So you don't have to take my word for it. Again, I don't have the stats, but if you have to do data and go, look at all the work that you're seeing out there, how much of that is actually work that people love, like really love, you'll find that it's a very small percentage, which the deduction you can make from there is either they've got a really bad agency, or they've got a client that doesn't understand creative work and they bought the wrong, or made the agency produce the wrong thing. So the evidence is there. It's not a radical statement to make. It's the truth, unfortunately. And I think it's an important thing for our industry to survive and for. Look at our country, for example. We need to create economies. We need our brands to get bigger because that's where it creates employment and prosperity. So actually, maybe it sounds a bit too noble, but if we do more effective work, and by effective I mean in work that actually connects with the consumer's hearts, because we know that works. If we do that, we're growing brands, we're growing companies, we're growing employment. So actually, as a marketing person, you should sit there before you even sign that thing off and ask yourself, are you doing the right thing for your country? Or are you just, ensuring you get a 13th check at the end of the year because you didn't fuck something up? I think, we may not be saving lives, but we definitely have an effect on people's livelihoods. And really, that's what matters, right? Yeah, so it's a capitalist piece of, career. The industry that we're in, and based on capitalism, the more you make, the more you feed the system, and so it goes round. Yes, the rich get richer, the poor get poorer, all of that stuff, but I'm moving to another discussion. The point is, what we do is sell. Our job is to sell, right? If we don't sell, as I said to you, the ripple effect of that is bad for us as a country. Having said that, I must say that unfortunately, unlike a lifesaver who jumps into the water to save a drowning person, we have another person with us in this life-saving thing. And that person in our lives is very much the marketing director and the marketing manager, or the person that makes the client, that makes the decision. So when you do have that like-minded thinking, that brave together thing, amazing things happen. And that's when things work. So but you've got to find that client, and that client has to find that agency that thinks like them for you to create magic, And that's what it requires, not just chemistry, but this understanding of two people, trust between a client and an agency is everything. If you're not working from a point of trust, right, you cannot make anything brave. And that for me is the biggest problem, is that when the agencies trust their clients and the clients start trusting the agencies, and there's many examples in this country of that happening, great stories of that happening. That's what we need. That's what the industry needs. It's lacking that. So trust is a big word, right? Like if you look in any human relationship, they don't talk about trust at first sight. There's love at first sight, there's lust at first sight. That's like a different thing. Trust comes with time, there's no other way. And trust comes with a track record. You cannot trust someone upon the first meeting. You can have an instinct about someone. So I think that what you can have in the beginning is respect. I don't think there's respect. So if I respect my client for being an expert in what my client does, and my client respects me for the expertise, and the agency for the expertise that the agency has, that's what the credentials are supposed to be. Because these guys know their shit. I'm coming to you to ask you for help. I've got to say, you know your shit because you're the brand. So if there's respect, that mutual respect for the two parties and what they bring to the table, as a starting point, you've got to you got something going. Then the trust happens with time and with a track record of success and with failure. That's another thing, is that you cannot build a record of trust if you're not allowing each other to fail. Because often the expectation is that it's going to be 100% success. If that were the case, I wouldn't be in advertising, I would be in music and making one-hit wonders time and time again, because I'd have a formula. So we're not in the business of science. We apply science to a lot of what we do, but we're in the business of magic. So client needs to understand that. Like, it's very difficult because everyone's talking ROI, everyone's talking measurements. I understand all of that stuff. But at the end of the day, you're talking about hearts. No one puts that in the equation. And when you're talking about hearts, you're talking about something that is immeasurable and uncertain. So you got to have respect for that, for the people and for that process. And then you've got to give people the opportunity to prove that what they're saying is going to work, and allow them to fail. Now that's a very easy thing for me to say on this side, right? Because it costs lots and lots of money. But the reward when you do succeed, the return on investment is tenfold versus just incremental moving on and doing just as much as the client needs you to do versus sort of breaking the ceiling and creating some magic that just goes way above and beyond any expectations. And that's what we pursue. That's what we should be pursuing all the time. There's a chemistry thing that happens when you go like, I dig this guy, I think he's bullshitting, then you're out of the equation. Or I think there's something he's got there to offer us. So as a starting point, that's a really good thing. I used to love leveling with my clients straight up, like this guy, like, listen, this is what I believe, this is what we do, this is our philosophy. There's an expectation up front, but there's also an honesty about it. But I think when you come in and you've inherited clients, it's a little more difficult. But it's true, if you don't respect that client, and if the client at the starting point, without you having done anything, doesn't respect you for what you do, and we've had cases like that, right? Everyone's had a story about it. It's like amazing. You can't go anywhere without respect for what the other party does. You have to. I think there's less and less of that, which is ironic, because you invited a certain agency. You go, I want to see those 3 agencies. Why? You should have some respect for what that particular supplier, and let's be honest, it's not a partner. The best place is to be partners, very few partners, lots of suppliers. That supplier is going to bring something to you that you can't do yourself. That has to be a respect. I'm having a kitchen done. The carpenter who actually does that stuff, I got to respect that person for being able to do something I can't. That's why he's in my kitchen. That's why he's building my stuff. But if you don't have that respect, you're going to produce work that is shit, because you're going to keep telling that carpenter how to cut that piece of wood. And you know what that piece of wood's going to look like if you do it. Because if you could have done it yourself, you should have done it yourself. It's an amazing thing. For me, I find it bizarre. I think companies get bigger. When they get bigger, you just have employees that go ahead with the process as they've always done it without going, actually, simple thinking behind this is there are people who can do this. I can't. I'm going to bring them on board to do it. There's a respect already, acknowledgement of it. So it's not that it doesn't happen. It does happen, but it's quite rare. The way to develop that relationship with a client, to make it a long-standing relationship, the first thing is respect. That I respect what you do, you respect what I do. The second thing is hard work, right? You've got to then, once you get the respect, work really hard to not let that respect down. I'm talking our agency. See, it's very important that it's a natural thing, right? Someone gives you a little bit of trust. Someone says, I'm leaving you my handbag. Please will you look after it for a minute? You look after that handbag better than you would your own handbag. It's an interesting thing because they have now entrusted you with something that's not valuable but not yours. So I think your hard work's very important. Then you've got to offer something to that client that they don't have. That's an originality. So delivery out of that hard work is very important. Delivering something that is solving the client's problem, right, is very important. Honesty. Like, honesty is so crucial. Like, you have to be honest with the client about what you think the client's doing wrong for the business. And then you have to be honest enough to say, I fucked up when you've done wrong. That you can never have 100% strike rate on a campaign. No one's ever created, not even Nike, not even Apple. You can go and ask them, even the best agency in the world cannot produce campaign after campaign 100% correct. Doesn't mean there's lack of intention. It's just the way it is. I told you, it's not a science, it's magic. Sometimes it's going to work, sometimes it's not. If more of them work than they don't, you've passed for the day. So you have to be honest enough to say, this didn't work, let us fix it. And then there has to be an acknowledgement of success afterwards. Firstly, for the client for buying into that work, acknowledge the role of the client in buying that work, and vice versa. The client needs to acknowledge and celebrate the agency for delivering that kind of work. So I think those are, if you do that and you get case by case, if you have 5 of those cases, you will become a partner, not a supplier. But you remember one thing, you start off as a supplier. Don't fool yourself into thinking you're a partner until that client trusts you implicitly with his work or her work over a long period of time. Then you're a partner. When the client phones you and says, dude, I've got a problem, I'm not selling this thing, I don't know what to do, then you got a partnership.